So I think we'll get started. If everybody could just grab a chair in the first couple rows. We're a nice small group, so it'll be nice and cozy. Okay, so because this is an official meeting of any committee that has a quorum, first we have to call each committee to order. So I know that we have a quorum for the West Concord Junction Cultural District Committee. So I call the West Concord Junction Cultural District Committee, let me try over here, to order. And we also, just so chairs know, we also have to announce any members who are Zooming in if you have a quorum. So we have two. We have Ann Mock and we have Helene Clayton. So let me find another chair. Do you have a quorum? All righty.
Richard Follander from the Concord Center Cultural District Task Force. Did you wear your task force uniforms as you came in here? Yeah, we have a quorum. Nobody on Zoom. There are three of us here. So I call our meeting to order.
Super. And Di, do you have a quorum? Okay. And is Betsy here? Oh, okay. Betsy, do you have a quorum? Okay, you're muted. Betsy, can you unmute? There you go.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
We do not have a quorum, but I believe Amy Beamer is on the call. She's another member of our council.
Okay.
I am. Hello.
Oh, hi, Amy.
Great. Okay. So just to kind of talk about why we're all here. So the idea is to bring together the four arts-related committees. And this really started in our committee because often we would say, gosh, I wonder if we could do a collaboration with this committee, and we would all go, because we didn't know what the other committees did. I think one really special thing about all our committees is that we're the organizations that have the overarching missions if we put all our charges together on the Arts Committee. Our charges also limit us. So for example, we can only work in the West Concord Cultural District, and you can only work in the Concord Center Cultural District. But if we all come together, then we can do some, I think, meaningful collaborations. So the purpose of this evening is just for us all to get to know each other, to hear what we all do, and then that will get us thinking as to what possible collaborations and what other issues we can talk about. And then we will talk about some particular questions for a while. And this is the kind of meeting that could go on for hours, but we're not going to do that. I'm really going to try to keep it to 8:30. So the first thing we're going to do is we will have each chair come up and just give a very short 3 to 4 minute presentation about who we are and what we do. And I guess I'm standing up, so I guess I'll go first.
Let me get your slideshow.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And not sure why it's not in present mode. Hang on.
That's okay.
There we go.
Okay. So we are the West Concord Junction Cultural District Committee. Oh, there we go. So and those are pictures of some of the things that we've done. Next slide, please. So our charge is, the intent of forming the West Concord Junction Cultural District is to encourage development of new resources and sustain existing cultural assets within the district, And our district is approximately Main Street and Commonwealth Business Districts, Bradford Street, and the Main Street and Church Street cultural areas. So what we do is we support the arts, cultural centers, and businesses within the cultural district to promote the arts and to further the viability of these small businesses and independent entrepreneurs. And now I'll tell you some of the ways we do that. So some of the things we've done in the last year was we did our little West Concord Sizzle video. We do Porch Fest every single year and get, what, 2,000 to 3,000 people, Jen? Amazing. We've added business profiles to the West Concord page on Visit Concord. We helped fund the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, organized by Margot and Mike Sprague. We participated in the business days of, Discover West Concord Day and Holiday Stroll, and we will be participating in Spring into West Concord Day. We hosted a large meeting with staff of regional cultural districts with Michael Bobbitt, the new Executive Director of Mass Cultural Council. And some of the things that we will be doing in the next couple of months, we're finishing up a brochure of the cultural district. We are doing our a box signal painting project, which is, there are 3 signal boxes, and we're going to choose 3 artists to paint them, and they're going to be really pretty. We're doing a poetry phone, expanded Porch Fest, a community art project funded by the Concord Cultural Council, thanks, and a sidewalk decal project. And that's it for me. So, Di, you're sitting.
Do you want your big dreams of what we wish we could do?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So some of the things that we wish we could do, that we're planning to do, that we've talked about doing: continued support for public art with new pieces every year. Finding new ways to support the arts community, which could be an online directory and a newsletter. Find new ways to support a diversity of business in the business community, and expanded collaborations with town committees and organizations, and that's what we're starting tonight. Di.
Feels a bit like a race. All righty. I'm representing the 250th Art, Literature, and Music Subcommittee of the Executive 250th Committee. So, one of the things I should say is that we're not an ongoing committee. We started in 2023 and we'll be ending in 2026. So it's really fun to be part of this, but I just wanted everybody to know that we won't be here forever as a town committee, not until the 300th comes up. Alrighty, so I know, I will. I'll watch out from above. I put this in the overall mission just to give you some background. The overall committee wants to develop a plan for celebrating the 250th that includes the contribution of Indigenous and Black Concordians. We also want to ensure the activities that represent our commitment to diversity and inclusiveness and give everybody a chance to participate. So that is a synopsis of that. And the next slide, the particular mission of our specific committee is to promote diverse, stimulating, and entertaining art, literature, and music programs, events, and activities, including original pieces to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution, reaching out to as many people as possible to stir interest, suggestions, and attendance. While our activities are within the framework up to 2026, I wanted to note on this slide that the Minuteman National Historic Park is going beyond. Oh, I'm sorry. Mechanics. So much better. Oh, okay. I did want to put in the schedule of what the Minuteman National Park is going to be doing, because they are extending the time frame for the celebration. And they have 3 themes that they are doing. that will take it to 2032. And the last theme, which is the longest one, which begins at 2026, is America Unfinished. And I think that will be a fascinating theme for everybody to noodle. So the next slide, oh, do I have to hit? Okay. The next slide is who's on our committee. And our subcommittee is comprised primarily of the directors and leaders of the various art, literature, and music organizations in Concord that are listed below. We've been meeting once a month for over a year, and we have begun constructing a calendar of events. Our goals and dreams. A current goal is to craft programs that will encourage anyone interested in creating a work of art for the 250th celebration to do so and have it seen and heard. You have to remember that as I said in the earlier slide, the organizations are creating, the art, literature, and music organizations are, creating their own programs. And so this is a sort of an outreach to individuals. So some of the kinds of things that we are exploring is a call for art. This is an anticipated program that Concord Art hopes to do. We have 2 calls for poetry. One just underway, thanks to Glenn Mitchell, who works with the Friends of the Concord Free Public Library. And the other poetry initiative is about to begin at the high school, spearheaded by Mara Clark, who I think is on the Zoom, Sam Williams, and C.C. King. I should also just note, parentheses, that the 250th Community Participation Committee is doing an essay contest, which is also being conducted at the high school. The hope is to add more participatory events like the one currently in the works, using the symbol of the lantern. And Richard Follander is leading the charge with this initiative. A lantern is an old symbol. It can illuminate the past, and it can light the way to the future. And Richard has got a lot of exciting ideas about that. Another new idea is to host a community sing for all ages and abilities. And the last item on the list, and this is a dream, would be to plan to have an outdoor amphitheater, which could be used by the community and, of course, by all the artists, writers, and musicians. We have a very creative and energized committee with lots of ideas. Some bubble up and some take off, and others need more work. But it's part of the creative process.
Thank you so much. Richard, would you like to come on up?
Just have to hit the pad. Just that one there, okay. Hello, everyone. You'll notice the British have taken over. Not only in down the main street, but the businesses, that fat face and the best of the British. I think we may need to, maybe we didn't win actually 250 years later, I don't know. So I'm here representing the Concord Center Cultural District Task Force. And the task force is I think we've got a slide here, I'll get to that, is the replacement of the cultural district. This is the generic goal of the task force, is to drive economic growth, strengthen our local character, improve quality of life across Massachusetts, but at least around Concord Center. And as many districts do, I guess everybody gets $15,000. We got ours. Well, so when the task force was formed, we were given 2 tasks. One, to get rid of $15,000, and I mean, we're doing it responsibly. and the other is to get rid of ourselves, basically, and find a new home for the task force to be incorporated in some way into another entity. And there are a couple of options that we can take, I'll mention. Our first allocation of the funds, or the focus of the allocation, is going to be related to the Freedom Silhouette, a really interesting art installation that will be put in Monument Square by September. This installation was among 3 finalists that were chosen by the committee, and we're contributing $7,000 toward the completion of that project. We're also allocating an additional $8,000 for associated programming, something that will take the themes of the installed art and bring them to life in other ways. And that call for artists is being fashioned as we speak, and we expect that our April meeting will have an opportunity to agree to that and get that out. The money we have has to be kind of earmarked by June and has to be spent before the end of this calendar year. So, you know, I think we've had a relatively compressed deadline, but I think the committee has successfully gotten us along, and we're going to be involved in a meaningful project. And again, I think part of the intent of this meeting itself is to provide opportunities to bring together resources to enhance each other's efforts. And so you can stay tuned. I think the opportunity to have the conversation that the benches are going to have providing will be really an interesting something that we hope should happen in the fall around good time tourist season as well. And this gets back to how our original committee became a little bit moribund, I suppose, and then was disbanded by the select board. And so the money that we have is being spent and will be spent, and then we're looking at options for the new entity. Am I going backwards here? Yeah, there we go. Oh yeah, we have this. Now, just as a little background, in other towns, Mimi did a little survey of other towns. Some towns, municipal departments run this kind of operation directly. In other towns, that there's a municipal committee that runs it, meaning something more like our cultural council might oversee the district in some fashion. Or another option would be a nonprofit superhero, nonprofit arts organization. So we're just in the early phases of discussing that, and so we're basically up for adoption. So if somebody here in this room is interested in adopting a really nice committee, you know, we'll put up the pictures and you can take us home with you tonight even, perhaps. So yeah, so that's where we are, and I think that's it. Thank you very much.
And the Culture Council?
Yep. So should I talk in here? So Betsy, you're next.
Here.
Okay, so we have your slides and.
Yeah, I'm chair of the Cultural Council. Next slide. Who we are chartered by the Mass Cultural Council, one of scores and scores of local cultural councils that get their funding every year from the legislature, gives money to the local cultural councils. And in Concord, we're fortunate that our select board and town manager give a portion of the budget every year to support local Concord applicants for our grants. So what we do, we award grants to local organizations that adhere to our guidelines, and those are all on the Mass Cultural Council website, as well as our own council guidelines, and those are on our website. The massculturalcouncil.org is our mother organization. And what we do is basically we get applications in the fall from arts organizations to whom we give grants after we read the description of the program, and we allocate the money that we get from the state and the town for local programs to each of these organizations. We send out the letters in December, and we operate on a reimbursement model so that the organization has its program and sends us receipts of what they paid to put it on, and then the town of Concord reimburses them the grant money that we've allocated to them. So it's an ongoing relationship that we have with many of our my grantees. Not everyone is from Concord. We have goodness, we get grants from arts organizations and individuals all over the state, pretty much. Ones that are out in Western Massachusetts, we may not give to, because we like to keep it kind of local. But yeah, so we begin the grant deadline, which is usually in October, and our town augments it by some good amount of money, and our members download the applications every year. And 2-month period, we discuss which ones are how we can divide up the grant, the pot of money that we get fairly and equitably. So last year, the town gave us $7,000, and we had 48 applicants who wanted almost $30,000, and of course we don't get that. Concord applicants requested $16,605. Not everyone gets a grant, and our preference is to reimburse the nonprofit applicants once their program has concluded rather than pay up front. I had another one. Okay. I had another slide with our membership.
That's the last slide here. Maybe this one with the members?
Yeah, okay. So then we have Hal Richmond, Amy Beamer, who's here, Arthur Rogers, Hillary Taylor, Anita Tuckley. There we are. And Bob Gross. We have 7 members, and we can have up to a lot more. So if anyone's interested in the work that we do, they can contact me. And Richard, if we want to talk about it, that'd be great. That's it.
Let's see if I can talk loud. Should I just talk loudly? Yes. Okay, so we will try that. People on the call like that. Okay, so this is the time that we had allotted for if anyone has questions of the 4 organizations about what they do, or if you have ideas for collaboration. So were there any questions or comments on any of the presentations? Richard? I think we're getting you a mic here.
There we go. I don't know how I did it. It's fine. I'm wondering, can we have a... Yeah, I'll just come up here. Do we have a number that we could come up with of the total amount of resources annually that are made available to arts organizations like this? And with the council, I do in my head, does the West Concord get more than 15,000? Concord gets 15. Is there more than 15? There's 16 apparently for the right for the town. I'm trying to get an overall number of how much money is being spent.
Should we do it so?
Available.
So we're 15.
the district or the cultural council itself do any, additional grant funding, find additional grants that are like grants from HIP? Does that happen, or we're basically going to
Yeah. So at the moment, our committee has not gotten any other grants, but I think we are going to start actively looking for some other grants. The Mass Cultural Council has a lot of grants that not only our 4 committees, but I know there's lots and lots of arts committees out there. So the Mass Cult, go ahead. Well, so that's right. We're going to apply to the Mass Cultural Council for a festival grant for Spring into West Concord in 2025. And that's, we are working with the business community for that. So that's $2,500. But I don't know if any other committees are seeking other grant funding. Yeah, but I think that's a really important point, that I think one of the things that we could do together is go for some of the bigger grants. And I think the Mass Cultural Council is a great source for that. So.
Oh, thank you, Mimi. I have a question about the prison land development. I have a question about the prison land development.
Okay,
and it's just, I mean, it's kind of a big question, but here it is. I wonder if there's, if there's a place at the table for the arts organizations in the development of the prison land, and maybe that's something that we would do as a group.
pass that on to.
Hi, my name is Mary Hartman. For those of you who don't know me, I'm on the select board. Right now, we're writing up a charge for a very, very early advisory board, because right now we have more questions than answers. Going forward, if the governor's budget bill passes, because right now we don't know that this is gonna be available, but if it passes, which will happen at the end of the summer, the select board will panel a wider community group that will include things like people who are interested in open space, economic development, the arts, housing, business. So right now we're paneling an advisory group, I said, that's very small, very tight, to kind of advise us, because what does this mean? We're in very early discovery stage. Is this really going to happen? And then if it happens, we'll broaden it up, and we will definitely include the arts in that discussion.
Jen, I know you had a question or a comment?
Well, this might be taking us off course, but I don't understand what happened to the Concord Center Cultural Committee. Like, can you explain a little bit more?
I'm sorry, who asked that question? You did. What was the question again? Right. Yeah, that committee kind of stopped working during COVID. It met very infrequently, and it was mostly driven by the Planning and Land Management Department. They were really the drivers of that, and every so often they'd bring in some people to talk about it. And then during COVID, it kind of didn't meet, and then I think it met one or two times, but it kind of people lost interest.
Yeah, I want to add something to that, which is that I think, and I asked the select board of this, that it could have stayed as an option for the task force to recommend as something to continue with, because like your West Concord group, its charge was not just about a grant. Its charge included all sorts of collaborations with artists, and but anyway, that's done. So while I have the microphone, I would just like to add that I think the West Concord group got also a small grant from the Cultural Council this year. Yeah, which is great. I am a little, I would encourage our task force, this is our meeting, to seriously consider endowing the local cultural council with some more of the funds that we are supposed to make recommendations about in the future. Something else that I am advocating for is that in addition to our organizations, we keep in mind making venues and opportunities available for individual artists, because the variety of the offerings is healthy for all of us, and also not to think about the arts just in terms of economic enhancement, at least not immediate economic enhancements, because things that artists offer, we don't know where they lead us as a community and where that might lead economically as well as otherwise. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions?
Thank you. I guess if we're going to talk about the prison land, I'd like to throw it out so it's on the record that it would be great to combine housing for artists and artist studios, excuse me, so like a live-work kind of space that would also be affordable and could also become a place, a gathering place for education, arts collaboration, and some kind of gallery situation. So that would be great in this, what do we call ourselves, Metro West, the Metro West area. Thanks.
Any other thoughts or ideas about?
Thank you. I'll just put in one point on that, just for, in case you don't have the frame of reference. If anybody has not been to Western Ave Studios in Lowell, that's exactly what you're talking about, and it's really worth a visit. It's 300 studios, 40 work lofts as a space. Western Avenue Studios in Lowell. It's really worth a visit as just a think tank.
Yeah, I just want to, pile onto that, that the town of Fitchburg is repurposing buildings in a big way for affordable artist space, which I think is going to help Fitchburg big time. And, people can take the train into Boston back and forth and through here. So that'd be neat to have an art corridor, wouldn't it?
Any other thoughts or questions or ideas? Okay, so we had actually come up with some questions. Maybe just get the conversation going.
Can you use the mic?
So we had come up with some questions just to get the conversation going. So I'll let you know what our questions are and see if that kind of sparks some more discussion, because I think this discussion has been fabulous so far. I think it's a lot of great ideas and some real collaborative opportunities. So the questions that we were thinking that we might talk about, just to kind of bring forth some collaborative opportunities for now, as well as in the future, would be: what are our existing strengths and what makes Concord unique? What are opportunities in our environment? Do you have any concerns? Are there common themes of concerns that we have, either lacks that we see in the arts community that we need to fill, or other concerns that you have? And what are our gaps in resources, and what kinds of changes do we need to make to maybe the way we work, or other kinds of changes we need to make in order that our arts community, both individuals and arts organizations, can thrive? Go ahead. Yeah.
Again, as an individual artist, I would say that anything that supports existing organizations to provide space to individual artists at low cost, or no cost in exchange for some benefit to them, maybe. Because if one wants to arrange a concert or a theatrical production, or probably also exhibit their works outside of their private studios, people, need venues to show their work. Then this is slightly different than once a year type of event, like the Porch festivals and the celebrations. This is more like focused on a particular artist's presentation. And myself as a classical pianist, that's another thing, because, I can rent space different places, but it can be pricey or hard to schedule. The library has a nice piano, but unlike before, they are not making it available at the moment for after-hour concerts. I did give concerts there, both during their series and after-hour concerts. But anyway, so essentially anything, either financial or other incentives to give to our organizational spaces or other spaces to make venues available to artists of all kinds. Thank you.
I just want to say I totally agree with Tanya that, the cost of real estate is obviously a big problem for artists, and only getting more so. I mean, that's so frequently the way an arts organization or a single artist can't continue working in Concord would be just being priced out of space. So that's something to keep in mind. And the other thing I just wanted to harken back to Michael Bobbitt's words to us about a year ago, which was the importance of artists advocating for the arts. And he made the comment of that artists don't tend to be a squeaky wheel. We don't squeak enough, and so other people get the money. So that's something I wanted to remind us that. And I think that his, in the Mass Cultural Council's recommendation is that we try to advocate for arts being a part of every project. How does that become a portion of each project that the town takes on, that it be included? And we can do that better as a group.
I think what Margot just said is that we need an advocate, and we need an advocate organization. When I worked in the city of Cambridge many, many years ago, there was an arts staff, and they had all kinds of committees that then dealt with various neighborhoods or different initiatives, but there was a very high priority. It was also a time when the federal government would actually put arts into the funding of major projects like the Red Line expansion, which I was involved in. They actually had 1% funding for arts. That's advocacy. That's gone away since then. But in any event, I think in Concord, and I wanted to get a sense of what the numbers are, we really, $40,000 or so is nothing. In terms of budgeting wise and everything. So if we took 40,000 and now we're all working it in our own little silos. I know we all want to do our own thing, but on the other hand, you take the enthusiasm of West Concord and you bring that as an advocacy thing while we're also doing West Concord, but the West Concord folks aren't just sticking their nose over there, they're sticking their nose up here. I think could go a way to maximize the limited resources we have. And I agree that the arts generally are not going to have the same amount of advocacy as many other issues, housing, land conservation, kids, et cetera, et cetera. So to marshal an advocacy organization that's also an entity of the town, whose mission isn't simply just to take in grants and then put the money out, but actually to come up with those kind of ideas about the prison or about any other opportunities that come along, would be, I think, a good thing to think about and maybe work toward at some point.
So here's a wish. I've had conversations with various people in this room about an open mic night, about a community saying, a pub choir. Some of us had our eyes on Nosh as the place where these things were starting to happen, and there was a real kind of community stage, community gathering place that was building at Nosh in a really nice way. And now with their change of business status, we've lost something there that was very cool. I mean, local bands were performing, trivia night was happening there. We were looking at doing a pub choir event there as a once a month thing. In the past, I think towns have invested or given some funding to a local spot like that to help make it possible to bring in artists or bring in local or create local events. I just think that would be that could be something very beneficial for a particular kind of activity. That there are a lot of musicians in this town. There are a lot of folks who are looking for performance opportunities. And if we had something in a social setting, in a business that lent itself to that, that would be also a good community building space, I think could be really great for Concord. And I wondered if there were funds, if some of these funds from Mass Cultural Council might be considered for investing in a community space like that.
The district has to be in the district. If you're out of the district, you're out of the funding for the district funding. So, but you're not out of the funding necessarily for the general cultural council funding, but who's looking at that to see where could we use the district funding, where can we use the cultural council funding, how do we maximize that opportunity?
So one thing I've noticed as I've looked at lists of grants from the Mass Cultural Council is that they have grants that are in like the 25,000, 50,000 range sometimes. And Mimi knows more about these grants than I do, but it seems like some of those grants would work for a performance, what do you think?
Well, I think there's a number of different grants that Concord could go for. Our Place America, that are both arts and culture related, but it oftentimes needs to have a little bit more infrastructure. So I think part of why we're coming together is like, can we collaborate to improve the kind of infrastructure among ourselves? So I know some of the things that we had talked about was, can the districts, maybe have a common theme? Can we tie in with infrastructure so that there's art like along the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail and leverage some of the funding that's connected with transportation, so that you're moving outside of just designated arts and culture funding. But a little bit is kind of, we need the infrastructure of collaboration to be able to get there, to have that ambition.
Just as a follow-up to what Jen said, maybe the Right Tavern, I think, might become a community gathering space, right? So if that works, that would be both in the cultural district and fun place to do what you're saying. Yeah.
I wonder if there's anybody from Zoom we haven't had a chance to.
Do any of our Zoomers have questions or thoughts or comments? Okay, if you do, just press the raise your hand, because I'm trying to keep an eye on you. So if you do have something you'd like to say, let us know. Anne, were you looking like you had something you wanted to say? No. Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to repeat a word that Jen used about community, because I do think that when we talk about sustainability, there's social sustainability and community building that's important for everything. And if we only get together for, business, I think we're missing a big part of how we can have people join together and get to know each other.
Any other thoughts or questions? Well, I had a question. So I'd heard a little bit about what the Right Tavern is doing, but I don't really know that much about it. Is there somebody who could sort of explain a little bit about what they're doing? Because that sounds like a great opportunity. Okay.
I mean, I did talk to Tom Wilson today about it. Here are the pieces that I know. You know, they're in the midst of trying to, on the one hand, bring the Wright Tavern back to its origins. It was a bakery, it was a tavern, and it's where some very historic things happened in creating this country's democracy and government. There's a vision to make it a very sort of intentional convening, a gathering place as a tavern, that it would be a working tavern and they would sell food and drink, but also hold meetings and discussions and events. And so, yeah, you know, when we were fantasizing about our pub choir, that was one of the places. One of the challenges is the size. It's broken up into lots of small rooms right now. There's a campaign, as I understand it, to renovate it and to make this space more workable while also keeping some of the historic aspects. So the vision for it is great. You know, they want to have some museum qualities as well as having a tavern social element. That's
One other thought I had as you were talking about advocating and so forth, it's the possibility of creating a nonprofit organization. And as a nonprofit, you could be more proactive in advocating for different things. You could also be an entity for funding. So anyway, it's just a thought.
When, in addition to possibly a nonprofit, I would still recommend that we keep, because that comes up in our discussions in terms of moving forward, that we nevertheless keep the dispensing of the funds stay within a public body, public committee, so that the process is more open to everyone, how it's being made, how the decisions are being made. Just wanted to put that in when the nonprofit subject comes up. It reminds me of that aspect of our charge, which we haven't really fully addressed yet.
Any other thoughts? Just look back at our questions and see if, because we do have a little bit more time.
Can you use the mic for the Zoom people? I'm sorry? Use the microphone.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Do we see gaps in resources? So I think some of those gaps have been talked about. Housing, space, performance space, funding in general. Are there other gaps that you are seeing or other needs that you're seeing? And I'm thinking particularly because, you know, the two cultural districts and the cultural council, you know, much of our mission is to support the arts communities. And so it would be very helpful if we could know sort of what your needs are as we do that kind of planning. Any thoughts?
I'm going to talk broadly. If you want to support the arts, you need, there's so many different ways in which the arts exist. So if you want to talk about supporting individual artists, they need space to work. They need affordable space to work. I'm really fortunate. I have a studio at the Umbrella, and I hear from artists all over the region. I'm friends with tons of artists who have studios in other places, but it's really hard. I mean, Maynard lost its big artist building. So the artists from Maynard were displaced and are looking for, you know, are finding places. But so that's the visual arts. And visual artists work quietly and usually alone. They work in their studios. You know, there is collaboration. And then I think about building community. And when I think about building community, it revolves around activities, right? So I think about people who love to go hear storytelling or who are tellers themselves, people who love to sing but don't want to be in. So I love the idea of a pub sing. I've been trying to find a singing group where you just basically, it's a singing jam. I don't want to sing for repertoire for performance. But I haven't been able to find that in the entire Boston area. I think about dance improv groups. You know, so I think about like a place like the Scout House. That has a large community space, but it doesn't have, you know, it's not a pub. It's not a place where there's food unless you bring it in. And that's a very different thing than, I mean, I don't know what happened in Nosh, and of course I want to know that, the story there. But I think about where are places that already exist that can be galvanized into gathering places, and it takes a long time for that, for those kinds of things also to take hold, for people to kind of go, oh yeah, every Thursday night there's a dance at the Scout House, right? Or every Wednesday night there's stand-up open mic storytelling somewhere. So to figure out where those things could happen, what kind of scheduling. I mean, I love your idea of an art czar, right? There's one in Boston, right? Yeah, to have you know, and have someone who helps coordinate and doles out. And so I think that when you're talking about performance, you're talking about a very different kind, or performance gathering, and that's a very different thing than when you're talking about visual artists who are looking for space, or performance groups who want to come together, or an improv thing, or, you know, so anyway, it's not saying much except blah, blah. There are lots of different needs. When you say the arts, it's incredibly broad. And should be.
You live in the town long enough, it's funny that some things had happened. Like the Scout House used to have the square dance. Oh, still does? Okay, well okay. And the open mic for singing and so forth used to be, I don't know if it still is, at the Colonial Inn, that cavern that back there. So I think it's just, you could bring those things back in a different way.
Well, COVID really did a number on it, right? Scout House used to dance every Thursday, now it's every other.
Would it be helpful if there was an online calendar of all those kinds of groups that got together, so that, you know, all the singing groups, and when do they get together, and when's all the things you talked about? Is that a lack? Is there a lack of information about the things that are currently going on?
Yes, but I don't know that an online listing is the way to do it, but there's definitely a lack.
Okay.
I mean, I have no idea what's going on except in the little communities that I live in. And so I know where to find what's up with them.
Maybe a touch of research to find out from the restaurants, what is your slow night? And would you be open to having storytelling or whatever else you were thinking about? Also, there are a few places that are still not open in town. Thinking about, there's a space right next to CBS, near Crosby's. The Bandoliers restaurant went in, but around the corner, the cleaners went out and something else went out. So it could be, could we occupy this place with something until you find anybody to come in?
Phillips Paint and make it into a gathering. Monday night storytelling, Tuesday nights the same,
I think this keeps getting back to where's the money? But I just quickly that space is slated for something, Di. It's going to become a retail space that is from the launch program at the high school. Yeah. Anyway, Art for All is going to we're going to be selling art products.
So
Is
what
the plan,
space-
the hope.
What space are we talking? What space are we?
The space is right. It's between CVS and Bandoliers. There's an empty space, and I think that it's a done deal that the high school is renting that, and it'll become a retail store that is, I believe, operated by the launch program. Students with special needs. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Which will be an outlet, we hope, for Art for All's art products from our participants with special needs.
Yeah.
Actually, I really liked that. I really like Di's idea, and it actually doesn't necessarily shouldn't take any money to. If anything, restaurants might, benefit from having a performance or a show or something on a slow night. I mean, it's to their advantage more than anything else. Well, I mean, as much as anything else. Another similar idea is in some towns, coffee houses offer exhibit space for visual artists. I don't know if any of the cafes that we have in town can be asked to do that. And back to the calendar idea, it would be super to have an arts calendar, overall arts calendar for the Concord, and also in one of our conversations, Mimi mentioned this great idea of creating a list of all artists. So I hope that happens, Mimi. Thank you.
Just based on that, one thought, I'm not sure if you, by the list, you meant sort of doing a creative directory. So for example, I'm hearing all these wonderful calls for art, and we've been issuing a few of those, and I think we're all reinventing the wheel of like, all right, let's try to figure out who the artists are, so that if a cafe is wanting to have a gallery, it's like, here's the visual artists in Concord, that they could reach out to them, not just the artists having to do the work, and it might be easier to communicate with one another. NIFA has got the back end called Creative Ground, which I chatted with them of how can we use the same infrastructure so that it's accessible. So for example, with the call to art that we did for the sculpture here in Monument Square, I went through their database of all the New England artists that do that type of work. So if we can try to get Concord artists in there, and then we can just pull out the Concord section to highlight locally.
I was going to say that's something the Mosaic Lowell program that we've put up in place in Lowell. Actually, we're using Creative Ground as the back end of that, and have created a whole Lowell specific directory out of that. It takes a little work. I suggest you hire out the process because it's easier to get it done. But it really, once you get it going, the hardest part is simply getting the artists and the organizations to actually clean up and sign up their directory. But it's a really powerful tool.
Yeah, I could actually see that as a collaboration between the two cultural districts, because we both have some funding coming in, and between the two of us, we cover both centers. So a thought for next year as you all are thinking of your budgets.
The tangent to all this, I've also wondered if, just like the Concord Museum was added to the Concord Center Cultural District, I wonder if Robin's House could also be looked into as a possible addition, even though geographically it's not right there, since whether exceptions like that can be made.
The Mass Cultural Council for the districts is pretty strict. So actually, you probably saw on the map for Concord Center, it didn't originally even include the Concord Museum because they said it had to have a contiguous walking path and the sidewalks weren't sufficient. So they were able to venture that far out. It's meant to be pretty close in. But there are other designations. This particular designation was really about kind of economic development. And it grew out of the Mass Cultural Council's placemaking initiative that was more kind of creative economy that they were leveraging. But we could kind of look at other ways of designating. I think the historic districts or the historic commission can maybe have maps of historic properties and do it through programming. We don't. The districts is kind of one tool, and we might want to look at some other ones.
That's great. Yeah, I meant it exactly like as an exception, just like the museum was made an exception. That's, I don't know if that came across. But what you're saying is great too.
Here's a sort of off-the-wall idea that you and I talked about at one point, and that is my curiosity about Club Car Cafe, about who owns that building. I often have thought that it's a perfect place for, and this is, I like the distinction you made between supporting artists versus creating community gathering places for arts and community. I think that would be a great place to have open mic performances, community performances. And so does that mean that gives us opportunity, or that shuts us out of opportunity? Is there a possibility, because it's not open in the evenings, right?
So, Bianca, what's the guy's name? I forget.
Ron.
Yeah, his daughter, I feel like his daughter has really kind of revived it lately. So it feels more like a real viable restaurant, they're really good. But, and I have asked her, she seems open to the idea of having more going on in the space, which, her dad wasn't, but she is. So I think there might be some collaboration possibilities there. But, I mean, they've got a lease on it. I don't think that would be up to the MBTA. We would be collaborating with that, right? We would be asking. I mean, I think it's worth approaching Bianca about that.
Any other thoughts or ideas? Well, I think we've come up with a lot of thoughts and ideas. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I think we've come up with a lot of thoughts and ideas. So I'm excited. I think that there are some real possibilities, and I think some of the things you've come up with are really concrete things that I think some of the committees as well as other organizations could start working on. Any other thoughts or ideas? It's 8 o'clock. Are we getting tired, or do we want to keep going?
Could you talk about a little more about the prison land and building itself, and kind of the process that you see going forward for how decisions are going to be made and who are going to be the players in those decisions? Great.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to remember that the town of Concord does not own that land. We don't own those buildings, thank God. We don't know what's under those buildings. We don't know the cost of demolishing those buildings. Right now, we don't even have a survey to tell us the boundary of the land that the state is considering to make surplus that would be available for some kind of redevelopment. So it's really in the state's hands. Representative Cataldo has done a great job of writing into the governor's budget bill a provision that will mean that Concord has a strong voice in those conversations. So we have a voice, and we will be heard, and the select board, the voices coming from via the select board, will be sure to have many forums in town to find out what people's preferences are and what we would like. But I think we have to be realistic that it's the state's land. So we're going to try our best to find out what people want and to advocate for that. And so far, the state has been very, very collaborative. So it'll be put into a group called they're called DCAM. It's an acronym for the Department of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance, okay? But so in the old days, they were like, oh my God, you don't, but the new people that are running it have done some wonderful redevelopment in Lowell. So I think right now we're feeling very positive about the collaboration, about the vision of the people that are going to make those decisions, and that they're serious about what Concord wants. I'll just end by saying there's another big unknown here, which is the redesign of Route 2. So the redesign of Route 2 is going to happen, probably concurrently with the redevelopment of that land. And the other, okay, I'll say one more thing. We also know that the Healy administration is laser focused on housing. Okay, so they want to build 600,000 houses in the state, in the Commonwealth, and this would be a prime site for them. So I think we have to be prepared for there will be housing there. There will be housing there, and part of it will be affordable. So that's all I know.
So when you say the redevelopment of Route 2, you're talking about the circle.
They're looking at the entire corridor from Leominster to Lincoln, and we all know that the rotary is a pinch point, right? But they're looking at the entire corridor.
This is a tangent, Mary, but has the state also said anything about additional shelter space there? I know they are in dire need of more shelters than.
They haven't said that. And remember, this is going to take years because, as I mentioned before, they've got to demolish it. We don't know what's underground. I think we're worried about that. So this is going to take years just to find out what's there.
Any other thoughts or ideas? Okay. Sue Beck has been taking notes. So those will turn into official minutes that will be on certainly the West Concord Junction Cultural District Committee minutes list. So I think that will be a good way maybe for moving forward so that these ideas aren't lost, because that's what I think is important, that this be the beginning of some really practical things going forward. So my next question is, if this was useful, would we like to do this again in a few months and kind of see where we are on some of those ideas, maybe do some more exploration of needs? Maybe we could broaden, we focused on the 4 committees just because we didn't know what everybody did, but now we know what everybody has done. So maybe broadening the number of people that we explicitly invite. Of course, it's a public meeting, so of course everybody's welcome. So I guess my question is, would you like to have another kind of meeting like this? And most importantly, which of the other committees would like to host it? I'm sorry?
For us as a group to meet twice a year or quarterly would make sense.
Okay.
I don't know about who wants to host.
Okay. Richard? Oh.
Just sort of as a practical matter, given our charge as the Concord Center Task Force, I expect that we will request that the West Concord District Committee and that the Cultural Council meet with us to discuss opportunities to become our home. So I think that's a very practical application of how to manage our limited cultural resources. So that's going to happen. Either we'll be inviting people to a meeting or we'll set up a separate meeting to do that. And we can sort of see where that goes from that point. I'd also like to clarify, if it's possible, what role this town staff is playing in all of this, because We certainly don't have a cultural czar, I don't think. But you know, maybe it's low key. They're not letting us know who they are. But so maybe Mimi can speak to that, or maybe the select board rep could, because it's obvious in many other committees there's an assigned staff person who, you know, works with the committee, motivates the committee, gives the committee ideas. Mimi's certainly done that for us at the Concord Center. So I think it might be worthwhile going forward, and this would be part of looking what the task force should be doing, clarifying the role of a cultural person in the town.
Just to clarify, so arts and culture, I'm not really the arts and culture person, but I recognize that arts and culture is part of economic vitality, that Concord, both because of tourism, but also just the arts here are businesses, just in terms of the umbrella and Concord Art, and public art helps bring people to our downtown. So I see that within my role. I recognize that doesn't necessarily hit some of the things of like art for art's sake and the kind of healing aspects for art. There's going back to there's lots of different ways to interpret art. So I'm helping on one segment of that. So I think there's plenty of roles that we could be playing on that. But I'm interested in what kind of ways I can support this effort.
Your official title is something like Economic Vitality Manager. I could just use General Vitality Manager, would be good for me, but you know, maybe we need a Cultural Vitality Manager, or that becomes part of it. I don't know if somebody from the select board wants to say anything about that.
The select board doesn't have a budget, so we don't. It's the town manager who has the budget. So if that is something that you think would be valuable, it really is something that we should be advocating to the people who have funds.
It's certainly valuable to the district to have staff support and expertise, yes.
The state has the money now, right? And I think we've heard some ideas beyond what you've already got as far as there might be other grant opportunities. So I would recommend that that's probably your best bet for funds.
Several times, you know, businesses have been mentioned as, you know, venues or supporters or whatever. So I'm just wondering if there's some way, if there's another meeting or some ongoing activity, if there's a way to sort of send the word out to business owners in town. You know, are you at all interested in having more arts in town, or learning what you might, you know, do to support, or what you might be able to offer, or ask questions? Might, you know, just might be a good idea to, if there's a way to send the word out that, you know, we would like to collaborate.
Yeah, I second that in the sense that if as the economic vitality manager, the goal is to enhance businesses and that they should all have a say in it. As an artist, I think that from the arts perspective, to focus only on the organizations is actually detrimental. I mean, we all need the organizations. As artists, as community, they're great to have. But to focus on those and to see them as the place where you can, yeah, it's detrimental to the arts, therefore it's detrimental in long term to economic vitality to only put the focus on those. And it's not just a matter of arts for art's sake, because it's, I mean, the organizations are also presenting arts that are mostly for art's sake. So it's the variety. If it would be great to meet periodically like this, and in addition to a notice for businesses, it would be great if just there was a invitation to artists, either in different artist gathering spaces, or just on the website, or just an announcement in the Concord Bridge. I wrote a letter to that effect, pretty much hoping more artists would show up, among other things. So we should include not just the organizations, but actual invitation for artists and any member of the public who wants to come and share their feelings and thoughts about this.
I guess one thing I want to say is I hope that Concord doesn't feel like it has to reinvent the wheel. The wheel's been invented by a lot of other communities where they've been able to make the case for why it's important to have strong arts organizations and what the arts bring to the community in an economic way and in a cultural way. So we can look to a lot of different towns where that's already been articulated. We don't need to make it up ourselves. So I don't think the question is to ask businesses whether they want to see more art. I don't think that's the question. It seems that one of the things that I was hearing is the loss of one particular place where a lot of things were beginning to galvanize and gel means where do those things go so they don't atrophy and die? And so it seems to me that it's really about public spaces that tend to be restaurants. And to get back to, I think Di said it, you know, like, what is a slow night? Is it a Tuesday night? You know, and if a restaurant says you can have the back room every Tuesday night, and then you know that the first Tuesday is this, and the second Tuesday is that, and the third Tuesday is that, and the fourth Tuesday is that, and then it becomes this thing. But I would hope that we wouldn't feel like that we have to reinvent the wheel.
Okay, so kind of getting back to the other question of our next step. So the West Concord Junction Cultural District Committee can't take on the responsibility of organizing this for the whole town. So it would need to be, what I'm hoping is that, you know, the four committees, and I know that two of you are kind of temporary, but, you know, whatever arts committees there are, could rotate the responsibility of just setting a date, sending out the agenda, and, you know, maybe letting the public know, and then continuing the conversation. So I guess my question, so Betsy has left, so we can't ask her, but so if we did the next one in the fall, Richard, because you're thinking of bringing people together anyway, would you be willing to do that?
I don't know what our status will be by that point. I think our what's our deadline for August was our deadline for the recommendation to the select board. So it would be prior to that we would be reaching out for specific individual or group conversations around a new home or something for the task force.
Well, I mean, maybe sometime in the summer when you're reaching out anyway.
Yeah.
Might there be a place to have a meeting like this?
Yeah, I'm a little reluctant to make any commitments on that in that regard for the committee at this point.
Okay.
One thing maybe as a starting point is having this artist directory that would be a directory of venues and a directory of the creative entities, individuals in Concord. So maybe I'll put it out there if there's a group of people that want to collaborate with me on that, whether it's going to be through the NEFA Creative Ground or some other tool. That's the kind of thing that's like the town responsibility. That's part of I've got a directory of all the other businesses, but I don't have a creatives directory. So I can take that on, and if some other folks want to work with me, and I think that's kind of a natural way that we'll be connecting with lots of people. And maybe when that is ready, then we can reconvene around that and sort of think of like, what can we do with this information now? That might be a good practical thing to organize around. What do folks think of that?
I'll do that with you.
Okay.
It's something I thought we should take on anyway as a committee, so.
Great. Okay, so it sounds like, unless somebody has another idea, that the next step for us is to take Mimi up on her offer And maybe if there are other people in this group or who here, if you know of anybody else who would be interested in working with Mimi on that. So I think maybe that is the next step, to center things around the directory. So we'll let Mimi and Sue and anybody else do their thing. And then when they feel it's useful to bring people together, then we'll have another meeting. Does that sound good to people? Okay. Thank you, Mimi.
Great. Well, thank you for organizing.
And thank you, everybody, for coming. I think it was really useful. And again, we'll have the minutes so that these ideas will not get lost. So the two committees that have quorums, which is, I think, me and you. Oh, go ahead.
That's right. So the there I am. The Concord Center Cultural District Committee. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Can I see that? So it's all in favor? Aye, we got it. Thank you.
Okay, and so the West Concord Cultural District Committee, motion to adjourn. Jen, okay, second. Sue, okay. Ann, okay. I think we have to do a roll call for the Zoomers. So Ann, yes. Helene, are you still there? Okay, we're going to assume that Helene is a yes. I'm a yes. Sue's a yes. Jen, are you a yes? Okay, we're done. We're out of here. Thank you for coming.